Here, nerds, we are going to be walking through a project that kind of goes through balance and also contrast. So what you're going to need to get started is 12 by 12 inch piece of white drawing paper. Cardstock works fine as well. Anyways, you are going to end up folding it into a bunch of sections, okay? And the reason this talks about balance is specifically talking about radial symmetry, and we're going to be dividing up our 12 by 12 piece of paper into 8 sections, and we're going to start that by actually just folding our paper. So let me get this out of the way, and what you're going to do is you're going to first fold corner to corner, and you want to get each of your corners to line up really nice. Press the fold really nice so you have a very nice crease. Then you unfold, and then you match the corners again, going the opposite direction. Do the same thing again, making sure that you have a nice hard crease, lining up the edges just right so you have nice corners, press so you have a nice crease, and then open one more time. Now, after those two folds, notice how we only have 4 sections, okay? The last one is when you're actually folding corner to corner going this way. So directly in half, so it makes a rectangle versus a triangle when you fold it. Once again, crease really nicely, okay? And then unfold, and the last one, you guessed it, okay? Folding it corner to corner once again, pressing really nice in a crease, and then opening up like so, okay? So that's the first big piece right here. And you will be given a triangle that is the same size as this piece. And this is where you are going to insert your design, okay? Because what we're going to be doing is we are going to be writing our name, kind of like in bubble letters, we'll go for it. And we're going to see it repeated over and over again. And in the end, it'll create an interesting design, as you'll see towards the end of this video. So first thing we got to do is we are going to be taking this triangle piece. Let's move this out of the way so we don't have it in front of us, okay? You got your triangle piece, and you need to put your name on it, okay? And we don't want it to be really, really small. If I put, my name down here, okay, it's not going to make a very interesting design at all. So we're going to flip that over and try one more time. What I want to do is I want to create my name so then the bottom of my letter and my top of my letter touches the edge of my paper. Okay, so I'm going to be stretching my letters, okay, to make them fit. Now you also want to make sure that whatever letters like close to the middle, or if you have an even number name, okay, the space in between your 2 middle letters is right around halfway, okay? It is okay if you have things a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller on one side versus the other, but you won't want it to be too dramatic. So I'm going to start with doing my name. So we're going to put sour on here with an S. I know the U is going to be in the middle, so I want to make sure that the S and the A take up a good amount of space. And let's get our U kind of in the middle. That'll work. And let's do an E close to the edge. Nice big E. And then we use an R to fill up the rest of that space. Okay? So notice how my letters touch the bottom and they also touch the top. The next thing we want to do is we want to make them more bubble letters. So we're actually going to, if you don't want to draw bubble letters, and you can do that from the get-go, but I find it easier to do bubble letters if I start with regular writing, okay, because that's a lot easier for me. And I actually am going to just make my lines a little bit thicker. So sometimes it's like the U, and I can just draw a second line on the inside or on the outside, depending on how much space you have in between. So I made my U much thicker. Something like my A is a little bit more tricky, where I'm going to add a little bit on the outside, and then I'm going to add a little bit on the inside, okay? And then I'll eventually erase that line in between, okay? So a little bit on the outside, a little bit on the inside, a little bit on the top of this piece, and a little bit on the bottom. Erase my inside pieces, and I do that for all my letters until I have my bubble letters across the whole thing, okay? Now, the next part is super important, okay, for the ease of our next couple of steps, and that is to trace your letters with Sharpie marker. And I just used a skinny Sharpie marker to go over my letters, okay? The reason why is because if you trace with the Sharpie marker, you will be able to see through to the back side. And I'll show you on this one very quickly to show my point. So I want to be able to see through to the opposite side. So I'm going to trace over my lines, nice and neatly because, you know, Sharpie marker doesn't erase, so I want to make sure I do it right the first time. We aren't keeping this specific piece as like our stencil as we move forward, but if we make a big flub here, we'll have that repeated 8 times on our project. So when I flip it over, notice how you can kind of see the U on the other side. Okay, it starts to bleed through. So if we trace with our Sharpie marker, you'll be able to go through and you want to trace, okay, your entire name. So it looks like your name normal on the front, and then on the back side you see almost like it's reversed, like it's in a mirror image. Okay, that's what you want to have on both sides. So side 1 has my name normal, side 2 I traced it. So you notice there's a backwards S, a backwards A, my backwards U, which looks like a normal U, which is pretty normal, a backwards E, and a backwards R. This is super important. Do not miss this step, okay? And the Sharpie really helps making it easy for you to trace the back side of it, okay? Now, what we're going to be doing for these next steps is we're going to be using a special tool, okay? And it is called carbon paper, okay? Carbon paper is sort of flat on one side and then it's shiny on the other side. Notice there's a little bit of shine there, okay? And what this does is it actually transfers, when you draw on it, the black shiny stuff onto your paper. So if I was going to draw, let's say, a smiley face, okay, right on my paper with the shiny side down, I lift it up and now I have a smiley face on my paper. It's almost like magic. It is super cool. So how we are using this for our project is we are going to be, in the end, wanting to get to this point, which looks like a lot, so don't freak out quite yet, okay? And what happens is we will use this transfer paper, this carbon paper, to get our design over and over again. Notice how we have sour frontwards, sour backwards, sour frontwards, sour backwards, okay? That's why we wanted to have both sides, so that it's a lot easier for you to trace the reverse image. So I want to walk through how you are going to do that. So we have our paper that we have folded into the 8 segments, okay? You are going to take your transfer paper, and if you are lucky like I am, one has a nice right angle edge. And you know what else has a right angle? That's right, the edge of my paper. So I'm actually going to line this up right on my paper's edge, and this is going to help me with the whole rest of it. So lining up on the corner. And this just makes it easier for me to see where this is going to go. Okay, so I want to line this up on the corner here and line this up straight along my edge. And I want to make sure I hold that really nicely so it doesn't move as I trace it. Okay, now I'm not able to see this corner to make sure it's perfectly straight, but if I have this corner lined up and I have this edge lined up and this carbon paper wasn't hanging over the edge, I should have it lined up pretty well. And if it's not 100% perfect, it's not the end of the world. You'll be okay. But it is a good start in getting where you want to go. Okay, so I'm actually going to trace with a pencil over and over again on my lines that I have made for my letters. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure that you are pressing kind of hard. Okay, so then the carbon transfers to your paper, okay, because it's going through a couple layers here. Make sure you don't forget the inside of letters. That's going to be super helpful as you keep moving forward. So just always double check that you got all that you need. Now, one thing that I didn't do, but you most certainly can, is if you get confused as to, if you hit a spot or not, okay. I used a regular pencil the entire time, but if you, do one layer and you do like red for your color, and then you can see if any section doesn't have red outlining it, and then when you do your next one, you can switch it to blue or switch it to green. Whatever helps you remember to get all the pieces. I just keep, saying over and over again in my brain, don't forget the middle, and that seems to work out just fine. Okay, when I pick it up and I move this piece, I'll be able to see my name transferred on the edge. Okay, now to continue this around each piece, I'm not going to have, sour going this direction. Okay, I want to create a design where I have the same letter in the middle all the way around. Okay, so I need to flip this over and then my name's going to end up being backwards, okay? And I do the same process with the carbon paper over and over again. So I line it up on the edge, I trace it, okay? See, I wrote down this is the back side, okay? And then I'll flip it. This wants to go this way, so then I'll get my carbon paper lined up on this side, trace it, okay? Then flip it, add it to this side, all the way until I have all 8 sections filled in with my design, okay? Now, once we get to this point, the next thing we want to do is we want to start adding some Sharpie over all of our lines, okay? And this helps sort of separate our good lines from like our smudges, because I can always go back and kind of erase if there's any flubs and mistakes on there. I can kind of clean that up a little bit. And then that's a lot easier to do when you trace over with the Sharpie, okay? Notice how each of my S's, see how they kind of created an interesting shape kind of design? You know, it almost doesn't even look like I wrote a name on here anymore, which is part of the cool factor in this, which I absolutely love. So when you are at this point, you have your letters all traced, you got a big eraser and you cleaned it up a little bit. We are going to start adding some color. And my advice, okay, versus doing one set of my name and then do the next set and do the next set, go one letter at a time. And how we are going to be adding some contrast into this work is we're going to make our letters really colorful for starters, and then we're going to have our background space be, you can either leave it blank or we can add some really cool patterns and designs in there. The other option you have is to flip-flop it. Okay, having nice solid colors in between your letters, and then the letter tracing themselves can have either the funky designs or be left with just being solid white. So we want to create sort of like a contrast between the two. One, we're creating like, you know, sort of an interesting design, but also we want to get our name kind of to stand out just a little bit, but not so much that it's super obvious as to what it is. So I'm going to do that. We're going to zoom through it, and then you're going to see what it looks like in the end. All right, so I have the first part done. So I got all my letters kind of matching in color. So I have all my S's right here are the light blue, then I got the red, the grays for the U, greens for the E's, and blues for my R's, okay? So this helps keep everything kind of balanced, okay? So then you keep that radial symmetry where I can almost rotate this and it looks the same, okay? And then I can rotate it again and it looks the same. That's how you know you have successful rotational or radial symmetry, okay? Now what we're going to do for the next bit, because we're not quite done yet, okay? We need to do something with that background there. And remember what I said, how you can have your colorful letters where you can flip-flop it and you worry about filling in just the spaces, okay? You have a couple options at this point. So I can choose a color, or maybe I do a couple colors, and I finish just filling in all the spaces in between, okay? So that's one option, okay? Option number two, which I'm really kind of thinking about doing, is sort of filling it in with like crazy random designs, okay? Or I think of like, you know, just doodling a bunch of random things that they don't necessarily have to look like anything. So a little bit more of non-objective doodles kind of in the background, filling in these kind of spaces, okay? Or you can fill it in with a bunch of patterns and stuff in there. And I'm actually going to just do mine with a bunch of Sharpie work that I thought would be really fun in adding some nice dark contrast in comparison to my very colorful letters. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and we're going to zoom through it so you can see what it looks like after this bit. You know what? I actually think I might consider mine done. Now, if you are doing your own and you add more designs in here, or, you know, I could go back and add some color here too. So, you know, I still might do some tweaking, but I think at this point, you know, it does show some good balance and radial symmetry. Notice how every single section, so I did the same kind of pattern and design that kind of goes inside, trying to keep that center axis point on there so you can see the chunks a lot easier, and then having similar kind of designs as we radiate outwards, so each chunk is very similar in the kind of designs that I did add to it. So I think I'll do some thinking on it, but I think this one's, you know, getting closer to being done. But like I said, you can tweak it however you want. You can, you know, you don't have to use colored pencils. If you use watercolors instead and you're playing around with different techniques, absolutely go for it. You know, the main focus on here is to create radial balance and also creating some contrast with the different kind of colors and techniques that you use. So I think that's all I got, and I hope this video was helpful, and enjoy arting.